The hour of 10 o'clock having arrived, I'd like to call the King County Board meeting of January 8th, 2019 to order. The clerk call the roll.
Allen. Ferrero. Here. Davist. Here. Fraz. Here. Hanson. Here. Hernandez. Oshite. Here. Iqbal. Here. Kenyon. Here. Caius. Here. Kopi. Here. Leonard. Here. Lewis. Here. Martin. Here. Molina. Sanchez. Here. Shefflo. Here. Silva. Here. Sterrett. Sturgis. Here. Thomas. Here. Weber. Here. Wegman. Here. Winicki. Here. You have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. I'd like you to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the prayer. Our audit staff member, Debbie Powers, if you'd come forward. Thank you, Debbie, for helping us with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and I'd like to ask Pastor Brian Zilke from Lord of Life Church in Elburn to come to the microphone to lead us in prayer. Pastor?
Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, on behalf of all who are gathered here, I thank you for this day. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for health, for sustenance, for community, and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thank you for your gracious and boundless love for us. You have established authorities such as this King County Board to serve by promoting peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for each member on this assembled board, asking that you would grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our community, a keen thirst for justice and rightness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, and personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give them an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around King County. I request these things in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Okay, next on the agenda, well, first of all, I would like to welcome our State's Attorney, Joe McMahon. Joe, thank you very much for taking your time being here today. He's just stepped out to talk with Jill O'Brien for a moment. I'd also like to thank Celeste for coming today in our county clerk's absence for Jack Cunningham. So Celeste, thank you so much for coming. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the December 3rd, 11th, and 21st, 2018 meeting? So moved by Mr. Frost, second by Mr. Sanchez. I have just two very minor. Are there any comments or adjustments first from the board? Okay, there are just, Celeste, I have just two real small items. And sorry?
Were those a renumbering?
No. I believe that, let's see, these are the minutes from December 11th. And let's see, under B, I think Bob Ori spells his name, and I wouldn't do this except that it's, you know, we have to have an amendment, I guess, to put these in so we pass it as amended. I think he spells his name O-U-R-Y. So just the spelling of the name. And then December 21st minutes in number 4, Resolution 18491, there was participation by Mr. Kenyon, and the sentence reads, discussion followed by Kenyon that this was a matter of both parties having an agreed understanding. I think a clear recollection of that, you know, that tape and the participation was a matter of both parties needing to have an agreed understanding. Is that your recollection, Mr. Kenyon? Okay. And it's these are the smallest changes. I do apologize. And I think that you, Celeste, and our staff with what Christy does and Gabriella, and Dawn, we take all this for granted, that all these trains run on time and all the different directions that they go. It's very meticulous work. Celeste, thank you very much for all your work, and Christy and Gabriella, very grateful. Now, I believe that I probably need an amendment, so move as amended for those two items. So I would ask Mr. Fraz and Mr. Sanchez if that's the spirit of your, okay. Any other changes or adjustments? If not, all those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Okay, this morning we have 5 zoning committee petitions, and in a moment I'm going to turn the program over to John Martin to take us through that. But before we do that, in presentations and discussion, under Chairman's short program, I'd like to defer my time over to our Sheriff, Ron Hain. I believe that, Ron, if you'd come forward, and Blair, if you'd give microphone, I believe that you're going to recognize a couple of your lieutenant officers' substantial service to the county. While he's coming forward, I'd also like to applaud the Sheriff, Sheriff Hain, for his energetic start in checking into the jail. I think that is an example of bold leadership, of leading from the front. What you're doing is you're demonstrating respect not only for all the board members and all the constituents that we serve mutually, but you demonstrate your respect for your staff and also to the prisoners who are resident in our jail. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Today we want to take a very brief moment to celebrate the careers of 2 people who gave so much to Kane County. I have been with the Sheriff's Office for the better part of 16 years. Even though I am your newly elected Sheriff, I know these 2 gentlemen very well and thought it was appropriate to take a moment just to give them a quick shout out at today's county board meeting. So first, can we have Lieutenant Eric Fisher come up? As he's walking up here, I'm going to read a little bit about Lieutenant Fisher. So Eric Fisher began his career with the Kane County Sheriff's Office in February of 1994. Lieutenant Fisher served in the Patrol Division, Investigations Division, Special Operations Unit, the SWAT team, and is a narcotics canine handler as a deputy sheriff. Lieutenant Fisher was promoted to sergeant in 2008, where he served in the Patrol and Civil Divisions, as well as supervising the Special Operations Unit. Eric was promoted to lieutenant in 2014 and led the Patrol Division before being assigned to run the Office of Professional Standards, which, if you're not tracking, that's internal affairs. So this is the guy you have to go see when you're in trouble at the Sheriff's Office. While serving in that role, Eric brought the integrity of the office to new levels by structuring new standards in police and correctional officer accountability. Lieutenant Fisher is retiring from the Sheriff's Office after this stellar career to continue his professional advancement in his new role with the U.S. military in Phoenix, Arizona. The Sheriff's Office, representatives of all Kane County government, and the citizens of Kane County owe Lieutenant Eric Fisher a resounding thank you for his integrity, servitude, and dedication to protecting our community. Director Craig Campbell, make your way to the front. Craig Campbell began his career with the Kane County Sheriff's Office in 1998 after serving for the Court Services Probation Division of Kane County. Craig was quickly recognized as an asset to the Sheriff's Office and served in the Patrol, Warrants, and Investigations Divisions before being promoted to the rank of Sergeant in 2005. Craig served in the Patrol Division and was later assigned to the Office of Professional Standards. You all remember what that one is. Craig was promoted to the rank of Lieutenant in 2014, where he continued to serve in the Office of Professional Standards and the Patrol Division, and a short time later was promoted to Director of Administration, where he helped drive the professionalism of the office forward and designed many new internal initiatives. Most notably, Director Campbell brought the essential services of the Kane County Accident Reconstruction Team to the Sheriff's Office, wherein it was no surprise that he quickly rose to the rank of commander of this multi-jurisdictional county-wide effort to thoroughly investigate and report major vehicle accidents in Kane County, a daunting task that we rely on the Kane County Accident Reconstruction Team heavily for. So it's an incredible asset to have Craig as part of that team. Director Campbell is retiring from the Sheriff's Office after his stellar career to continue continuous professional advancement as Deputy Chief of the Elgin Community College Police Department. The Sheriff's Office, representatives of all Kane County government, and the citizens of Kane County owe Director Craig Campbell a resounding thank you for his integrity, servitude, and dedication to protecting our community.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Lieutenants. Next on the agenda is any speakers on agenda or non-agenda items other than zoning petitions. We don't have anybody signed up this morning. We have, 5 different petitions for zoning, but do we have anybody here who would like to address the board on either agenda or non-agenda items other than zoning? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to the next, which is zoning petitions. I'd like to turn the program over to John Martin. And, we are very fortunate to have so many people on this board. I think that we were good before, but I think that we've become even stronger with new members, and as experienced veteran members become more experienced at what they do. Some of you may know that John devoted, it's at least 30 years of a legal career in the development area, so he knows where he's coming from on this. We're very fortunate to have him serving. So with that, John, I'm going to turn it over to you for the procedure and also recognition of speakers. Okay?
Thank you. As has been stated, we have a number of items on the agenda today, and the format is going to be that I will recognize speakers that have signed and as to each of the separate petitions, then move and request a second motion, and then the board will deliberate, the full board will deliberate. Each speaker will have 4 minutes to speak, and when you approach the podium, please give your name and address. The first is Mill Creek Land Company. Has a proposed residential project, a major adjustment to the planned unit development at Mill Creek, which effectively changes the zoning of a previously zoned commercial area to a residential area. It's located generally along Mill Creek Drive, west of the swimming pool in Mill Creek. There were a couple of objections raised by adjoining property owners, none of whom have signed up today, I don't believe, to speak. The Regional Plan Commission was not applicable to this. The Zoning Board approved it. The Development Committee approved it. Before I ask for a motion, there are 2 people signed up for on behalf of the petitioner. Do you want to speak, or are you just here to address questions?
To address questions.
Okay, thank you. So I move and request a second for approval of this motion. Mr. Fries, seconds. You want me to? Okay, we're open for discussion then. O'Shea.
Chairman Martin, I just would like to reflect back to his statements.
Thank you. Mr. Fries?
Yeah, this item's in my district, and it's essentially, I guess we don't have a graphic, but essentially there's a large parking lot with the community pool at one end, which was taken over by the Park District. So there's about 3 times the parking that's needed. On the west end of the property, it was zoned back in the 90s, I believe, for retail. And what we've learned with these subdivisions, it was kind of fun to zone these little community stores in the middle of a subdivision, but it's just not practical, and it's probably not going to fly. So we did have some people showed up originally in the TBA that opposed it. I've met with and talked to several of them. They did not attend our last development meeting. I'm recommending we move forward. The product that is being proposed here as far as housing already exists in the subdivision. They're row homes, and the facades are going to face north or to the top of that photo there. So the residents that we're concerned are across the street, so they'll be looking at the front of a home. These are houses houses that range from the very high 200s up to $400,000. So it's not low-income housing or something objectionable. So I think it is a good fit and a good use for the property. The neighbors brought up some issues. They were worried about safety and traffic, and it really is no more than what would have been existing. I don't see any issues, but it was definitely no more than what is already approved there, which is the retail. So I urge approval.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. Deborah?
Excuse my delay here. I was trying to pull up the letters that came from the neighbors dated back to mid-November, and they mentioned some things that I don't think were ever addressed that I saw coming back from the developer. They were concerned about capacity for wastewater. They were concerned about water that pools on this property as it is. And then they sent pictures showing how the streets that are across from this property are narrow and are frequently parked on by people who need more than the 2 spaces that I guess they have with their properties. So I was wondering if the developer had ever responded to these concerns. Their solution was not that building not be allowed, but that the footprint be more like what was originally planned there, which was an L-shaped retail center. And they were suggesting that if the same amount of land were being taken up by homes as would have been taken up by the retail center, with enough space for guests to park and some green space to help deal with the water issues, that would be not as profitable a solution, but a more amenable solution as far as they were concerned. And since they already lived there and had bought into the project expecting something more like the L-shaped retail center, even though the retail center is no longer considered a viable idea, at least the land would be used in approximately the same way and would be more like what they had bought into when they joined this community. So I was just wondering if the developers had ever responded to the committee or to our own staff to address some of these issues.
Mr. Patzel.
Good morning. My name is David Patzelt, I'm from the Shodine Group. For the record, 77 North 1st Street, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. In response to your 3 bulleted points, the first one being the question of capacity or available capacity of the sanitary wastewater system, which the sanitary wastewater is provided system is in purifying or cleansing of the water is provided by the Mill Creek Water Reclamation District. The district currently has capacity for the proposed use. Not clearly, I believe it's in that chart on the lower right, we had provided a calculation of the actual wastewater generated by the proposed commercial retail use as compared to the wastewater generated by the residential use, and the actual wastewater generated in the residential uses is less than that would have been generated by the retail. So specifically to your question about did we provide a response, we had provided that response in the calculation of those 2 different uses. Further, there is a requirement within the approval packet that prior to obtaining the building permits for the residential uses, we have to have the Mill Creek Water Reclamation Reclamation District, who authorizes the capacity of the plant, sign off prior to the county issuing building permits. So I think that's twofold, hopefully satisfies your question about the wastewater capacity. The second one, the stormwater and ponding of water on the site. The stormwater basin that you see to the west and south and somewhat southeast. So this area here, and then southwest, and then immediately south off of the map is a stormwater basin that was built for the development for the capacity of this proposed commercial development in this that land area. So that the stormwater has stormwater capacity is there and is sufficient for the residential use as well as the commercial use if that would have been built. The ponding water that they may be referring to could be as a result of what we call interim grading, meaning that if commercial buildings are built, the land would have been built up once those buildings arrive or are constructed. The land is left low prior to the buildings being built there. So that's why they may see some ponding water that's out there today because of what's referred to as commonly called the interim grading plan. So once the residential homes, the design, we have completed the preliminary engineering that has been submitted to Water Resources, has been reviewed, and that preliminary engineering shows all of the drainage patterns once the residential units will be built, and there will not be any standing water. And we've also provided the calculations for the stormwater, the volume of stormwater that's needed, and the capacity is there in that stormwater basin. Your last one regarding parking. If I could ask Mark if they could change the slides to the one that, I can actually do that, okay. This perhaps is one of the exhibits that illustrate that. So the photographs were taken of these streets that are running north off of South Mill Creek Drive. All of the streets within Mill Creek are of the same width, so the residents that live to the north don't have any narrower streets than the other streets within all of Mill Creek. So they're identical in street width, but to provide clarity at the request of where the people would be parking of the proposed residential use, these little black rectangles represent vehicles, and in our exhibits we provided the number of vehicles that would be, with our plan, would be able to park on the site. And each home has at least a 2-car garage, plus the 2 cars can park in the driveway that approach the garage, so that is in essence 4 cars per home. In addition to that, there's parallel parking and identified there along the street, and these little crosshatches indicate the number of vehicles that potentially could park on the street, legally park on the street, and still allow for safe passage. So we are providing a greater amount of parking than actually is required for the residential use. Hopefully I've hit your 3 points. If there's any questions or clarifications, I'd be happy to answer it for you or anybody else.
Giselle?
First off, I think we all want to compliment Mill Creek on managing to have a reclamation system. I have attended a couple of seminars in my years here about how that works, because the treatment is so environmentally sound, and the effluent is used to water the golf courses. So what could be better than that? So I appreciate the project generally and the specificity that you're comfortable with that. Are you saying that the people who live north and the streets that come down, the pictures that were sent to us that showed such a lot of cars parked on those streets and how there's frequently room for only 1 car to pass and no room for a fire truck to choose to park on the street rather than in their own garages or driveways?
Two responses to that, and I don't want this to come out that I'm picking on the particular person that had submitted the photographs. If you look closely at the photographs, the vehicles are construction trailers and construction trucks. It was apparent to us that somebody had a project ongoing in the neighborhood, and there was construction vehicles parked in the street, perhaps over a little bit larger vehicles. And secondly, I'm not sure if it was included in your packet, but there was a posting that was on Facebook about some of the residents that lived in that area were posting Facebook comments to their fellow residents asking that there's room in your driveway and there's room in your garage. Why do you keep parking on the street? So I took that as that there's some discussion or debate amongst the residents themselves as to where their fellow neighbors should be or should not be parking. There are no parking restrictions by the roadway commissioner on those streets that were being referenced and photographed. There's no traffic incidents identified on those streets. So I don't put a lot of credence, perhaps, in that there is truly a parking issue on those streets north of this proposed amendment.
Deborah?
Just the response that I live in an urban neighborhood. I have homes that are much closer than these and streets that are equally narrow and traffic restrictions. And not all the wonderful park space that you folks have. The trick is that somebody's going to have a birthday. Somebody's going to have a summer barbecue. Somebody's going to have a sports party. And that will, it may be momentary, but what would be helpful, I think, in your plan is if there were spaces for those folks to show up. If there was a parking area for the 6 extra cars that come for the kid's birthday, as opposed to having to, if I'm having my, if I have one of the north units, my guests are going to have to park on the street down here at the bottom and then walk over to my unit. Or, more likely, they will park as close as they can, which means they'll spill into the neighborhoods above. And I just think some of those concerns are reasonable ones on the neighbor's part.
I think consideration should also be given to the, if you look to the area to the east of the residential, the swimming pool parking lot that is shown here to the right of the residential area, that the pool is only open from Memorial Day to Labor Day, and prior to submitting this plan to the county for an adjustment, we had gone to the Park District to see if they were in need of additional parking, and at that point in time, they had said no, there was no need for additional parking. So if I'm a visitor in lots 1 through 9, and I'm not parking in, I don't want to park in the street to the south, I don't want to park in the visitor or the visiting home's driveway, certainly we believe that there's going to be parking available in that parking lot to the east, and that parking lot does not have any restrictions. So again, we're exceeding the ordinance's requirement for the number of parking spaces for residential use, and I believe that there's an abundance of parking, and don't know of any other complaints about parking in all of Mill Creek on the size of the streets in the residential unit.
May I just clarify then? So if someone says you can park over in the pool parking lot and just walk across, there won't be any signs over there saying your car's going to be towed or anything like that?
Correct. There are none there today. If you visited the site, there's no restriction for parking there.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other comments or questions? Seeing none, if the clerk would please call the roll.
Ellen? Guerrero?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Fries?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Hoshite? I'm sorry. Okay. Iqbal?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Caius?
Yes.
Kopi?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Lewis? Yes. Martin?
Yes.
Molina?
Yes.
Sanchez? Yes. Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva?
Yes.
Sterrett?
Yes.
Surgis?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Wegman?
Yes.
Winnicki?
Yes.
Passes.
The second petition before us is petition number 4481, and it's in Blackberry Township. It was originally filed in the name of Diamond Street Partnership, and I believe that the petitioner, Mark, the petitioner is asked to amend and add the name. Would you recite that, please, for the record?
Sure, it's a joint petition between the landowner, Diamond Street Partners, and Soltage LLC, so the record would reflect them as the lessee and applicant for the petition.
It's generally located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Lorraine and Seavey. It's currently zoned special, they're seeking a special use in the farming district. We had one objector at the hearing who is not registered to speak today. The zoning board approved with recommendations that the petitioner adhere to the staff recommendations, that a glare study be completed, that foliage be added to the south side of the property as an additional screen, and that there be a consultation with the Caneville and Countryside Fire Protection District about the facility. The development committee approved the project, adding one stipulation, and that being that the petitioners meet with Blackberry Township Highway Department for construction impacts. We have one speaker signed today. Are you, Jonathan Roberts, are you here to address questions? Okay, thank you. So I move and request a second for approval of this petition. Mr. Fries, seconds. We're open for discussion. Mr. Fries?
Yeah, this is in my district also, and I've been out to the site and visited. It's just about ideal for this type of application. It's a big square field, and in addition to the usual fence line type trees, there's actually some evergreens and trees that were obviously planted there over the years around the perimeter. Very, very low traffic intersection of two gravel roads that are not much bigger than a gravel driveway. And we've really loaded them up with stipulations to make sure things are done right. So at this point, I'm supporting it. Thank you.
We have any other comments or questions? Mrs. Allen.
I'm sorry, I tried to search through here and I just couldn't find it. Does anyone know about how many acres this parcel is?
I'm sorry, I was...
About how many acres the parcel is?
9.05.
Okay. And can I ask where the objecting neighbor is on here?
To the south, approximately 500, 600, 800 feet.
Oh,
you're welcome.
Any other questions or comments?
This is just, if you look at that last picture, the King County gravel bed, it's just to the east of that, so that's the kind of use of the site farm. That's all former gravel bed properties that are part there, also gravel. So very large farm type properties, nurseries out there, so they're very low population gravel tracts.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Allen? Aye. Guerrero? Yes. Davis?
Yes.
Fries?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Hoshite?
Yes.
Iqbal?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Caius?
Yes.
Kopi? Leonard? Lewis? Martin?
Yes.
Molina? Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva?
Yes.
Sterrett?
Yes.
Surgis? Thomas?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Wegman?
Yes.
Winnicki? Passes.
Motion carries. And Our next petition is petition 4482 in Plato Township. It's generally located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Rorson and Ripperger Road, excuse me. They're seeking a special use in the F farming district for a commercial solar electric system. There are their neighbors are objectors and have signed up to speak, and I will call on them shortly. The zoning board voted 4 aye and 3 nay, which effectively is a negative vote with a series of conditions which are on your submittal as you see them today and which I make part of the record. The committee voted to decline the petition, and it's before us today with that recommendation in hand. Before we have the speakers' addresses, I'd like Mark, if he would, to run through the PowerPoint so that everybody has a full picture of what it is we're looking at here before we debate it.
Good morning. Good morning. Briefly, these are slides that were presented at the zoning board hearing and at development committee. This is the location on the county's 2040 plan for land use. This is in a resource management area. In terms of planning, you can see some of the residential planned areas to the east and the historic village of Plato Center. There it is on a zoning map. You can see most of the areas zoned F district farming except for the business and residential uses in the village. Here's an aerial showing the parcel in question for the proposed solar utility. Here's a close-up. You can see single-family residential uses to the south, some businesses here, single-family use right on the corner, and then additional on Rorson Road to the north. This is a drainage field tile study that was submitted because of concerns of the drainage on the property and off-site. This is a close-up of the landscape and screening for the fence and landscaping to the south, and then also there'd be on to the west. Here's a description of where the fencing and the solar panels would actually be. The zoning board had recommended as a stipulation a setback of 300 feet from property line to the solar panels. The petitioner has, before development committee, submitted a revised site plan showing a little bit more than 200 feet distance, but not the 300 recommended by the zoning board. These were submitted by the petitioner. This is how the farm field looks from the southwest corner looking to the north, and a depiction of how it would look with the 3 new utility poles, landscaping, and the solar panels. And here's the same type of view, but from the northwest looking to the south, you can see the single-family residences in Plato Center. This is the driveway to that residence to the north. And here's a depiction of how the fencing, solar panels, and landscaping would look from the northwest. I'll go through the conditions here to get back to the site plan, and I'll turn over to the petitioner at this point.
As I indicated, we have a number of speakers. I'm going to first call on Mr. Tim Moroder. And remind you, please, that it's 4 minutes, and please give your name and address.
Tim Moroder, 41W682 Rorson Road, Plato Center, Illinois. Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. By now, you've all received a letter indicating the position of the Plato Township Board, and I am a representative of that Township Board as a trustee. I'm just going to hit real quickly on some of our concerns that we had. First one regarding the decision to make F1 farming parcels available for solar farms for special use. We believe that the vision and the intent was to site these projects outside, on the outskirts of towns or outside of towns. And the ideal site is very similar to what Mr. Fraz identified with the Blackberry Township. So today you'll be looking at maybe a best case scenario and a worst case scenario, so that may help you with your decision making today. We do not believe this project meets the spirit of the county's intent or vision for these projects, location of these projects. We're concerned about negative impact to property values adjacent to the residential, the adjacent residential properties. The study furnished by the petitioner was a canned study providing examples from around the country, but none provide anything close to an apples-to-apples comparison, and Mr. French himself said that they don't have anything like that. So when we say that generally these don't impact property values, these projects, that's true, because they're normally on or generally on parcels like the Blackberry Township. So this would be an exception. As Water Resources has identified, this area has a history of chronic drainage issues. We are working with Water Resources. We've reestablished our Plato-Rutland Drainage District. We've reinstated the district's tax levy, but this is still going to take several years for us to improve the drainage issues that we have in this area. Plato Center is a bowl. All the water drains into there, and we've got terrible problems with our drainage infrastructure. We're going to get that corrected, but in the meantime, we ask that you not approve a project that could exacerbate our already flood-prone areas. I'd like to summarize the results of the presentations of facts to the zoning board. As far as the Zoning Board of Appeals, after 2.5 hours of presentation from both sides, testimony, discussion, questions, and thoughtful deliberation, the ZBA decided that there were 16 shortcomings in this project. They proposed 16 stipulations for approval of this project. The petitioner knows that setbacks are common, and they are certainly not unprecedented. We provided dozens and dozens of examples of different counties and communities that have established setbacks. A 300-foot buffer simply works to help to provide a minimum measure of protection for those existing residential properties, values, and then it also, we would ask that you consider a 300-foot setback going forward permanently. That helps to steer these projects to the areas that you certainly envision them being. Case in point, like a Blackberry Township project. This project doesn't allow for any flexibility, so the petitioner is saying that they can't give the 300-foot setback. Most of the projects that we've found throughout the country, the array, the actual solar array, is only about 1/3 of the size of the total acreage, which allows for flexibility, which allows for negotiations. This project is inflexible, and that's not your fault that they squeezed this into a parcel that allows them no flexibility. Even if the Water Resources mandated engineering studies wind up requiring some type of detention, they don't have anywhere to do that. When our community first started meeting, we thought about taking our plea county-wide, because there are so many people, thousands of people, who have properties that butt up to farm property. We decided to stay within our community. After we did some research, we quickly realized that given the opportunity to present our facts and research to a reasonable and open-minded objective audience, we couldn't lose. To us, the facts as they relate to this specific site made this a no-brainer. We bet on the fact that our audience would be objective and reasonable, and we were rewarded. That's all anybody can ask for. We appreciate the thoughtful time and consideration of facts provided by the ZBA and the Development Committee. So in closing, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Van Kerkhoff, his entire staff. They've been professional and extremely helpful. I'd like to thank Barbara for her support and assistance throughout this process. The Zoning Board, the Development Committee for their thoughtful and objective viewpoints, and we'd like to thank you people. Several times in the last few weeks as this has been winding down, the comment from our group has been, hey, the system really works. It works because people like you come in here without preconceived outcomes. You listen objectively to the facts as presented, and then you make an informed decision as best you can.
Are you concluding, sir?
So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Bill French and Jim Griffin has signed up as petitions representatives. Are you going to speak? Okay, thank you.
Yes, good morning. My name is Bill French. I'm the Regional Director of Project Development for SunVest Solar. We are located here in Geneva at 25 North River Lane, 60134. Yes, this project has received much scrutiny and review and was the subject of lengthy public hearings before the Zoning Board and the Development Committee. During these meetings, many claims were made by others that were not backed up with expert testimony or facts. And for the record, I'd just like to present some of the following information regarding this development for your consideration. Number one, solar energy is safe. There have been thousands of megawatts of photovoltaic projects, such as the one we're proposing, that have been installed around the world and in the United States. These have been done without harm to the environment. The panels proposed in Kane County are the same type of photovoltaic panels that are installed on homes, churches, schools, hospitals, and businesses. They are clean, they are safe, and they do not create any emissions. Solar gardens do not affect property values. At the Zoning Board, we had expert testimony that provided information showing that existing solar facilities do not affect property values for homes nearby them. There's no appreciable difference in the resale value. It has been proven time and again. They did a case study for 9 different solar facilities here in the Midwest, showing that there just is no appreciable reduction in property values for homes that are near solar properties. So when you hear that, we back that up with expert testimony. The solar facility will not increase stormwater runoff. Our expert provided testimony that we will fully adhere to the Kane County Stormwater Ordinance and the Illinois drainage laws. He also testified that we will not increase runoff, and in his experience, the actual amount of runoff is decreased once the project is up and fully developed. Once the ground cover is established underneath the solar panels, there's actually a reduction in the amount of stormwater runoff that'll occur. Solar facilities will not affect the groundwater in well. There was some testimony made by neighbors that they're concerned about their stormwater in wells. The support system that holds up a solar facility such as this is a galvanized steel frame. It's installed in the ground about 8 to 15 feet deep, which is about the same depth as any kind of home foundation that would occur in and around this area. So this project will not affect wells. It will not penetrate the aquifer and will not be detrimental. Solar panels are not toxic and they're weather resistant. This type of solar panel, which is called a multi-poly crystalline silicon solar panel, are constructed of glass, silica, aluminum framing, similar to a microchip that's in your phone or in a computer. They do not leach chemicals. So once it's up and installed, it'll be safe. It will not harm the environment. The panels are also designed to be weather resistant. They withstand hail, snow, rain, and wind up to 105 miles an hour. Solar gardens are quiet. During the day, the inverter emits about 60 decibels of sound at 3 feet, about the length of your arm, which is a normal conversation. Beyond that, then the decibels drop off. At night, there is no sound. They are silent. They are quiet. The solar panels do not create glare. Solar panels are designed to collect the sunlight, not reflect it. They are treated with a non-reflective surface that minimizes potential glare. And in fact, solar panels have been installed on many airport properties around the world without incident. Solar panels are good neighbors. Solar panels require very little maintenance and create very little traffic. There are no lights, so it will be not lit at night, and there are no buildings as part of the construction. The facility will be set back from property lines consistent with other special use setbacks applications in the county, as we proved at the Development Committee. In addition, as you saw, we are providing extensive landscaping between the facility and existing neighbors. Solar gardens can be removed after their useful life. So at the useful life, once the project has reached its useful life, the entire facility will be removed. There is no concrete involved, so there's very little disturbance. And then the property can revert back to its agricultural use, which it is today. Just want to make two more points and I'm out. Unincorporated Plato Township is not a historic district. It's been mentioned many times. It's not identified as a historic district by Kane County, the state of Illinois, nor the National Register of Historic Places. And lastly, we believe that we adhere to the findings of fact as required by the special use, and that we are adhering to Kane County's 2040 land use plan, especially as it relates to the development and promotion of small and utility scale renewable energy generation. Thank you very much. I'm here to answer any questions should you have them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I assume Mr. Griffin is not here? Okay. The next speaker then would be Matt Clark.
Good morning, Matt Clark, 39W552, Elgin 60124. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Kane County board members. I am a part of the Plato Township board. I am a trustee on that board, and I am here to support the decisions of the Kane County Zoning Board and the Kane County Development to oppose this project of a development of a solar farm at the property of Rip Burger and Rorson Roads in Plato Center. As a representative of the residents of Plato Township, we agree with the 16 stipulations presented by the zoning board, including the 300-foot setback proposed. I and others in Plato Township, this is not an appropriate location. We're not debating Mr. French's statement that these solar panels are bad for the environment. That's not what we're here for. We embrace solar energy, we embrace green energy, but this is not the location of where this could potentially reside. We feel there are better locations within our township for this or other green energy products. And speaking with other institutions in the area and government agencies, we propose that SunVest look at other following locations for this or other future projects. First site we would suggest is that Central School District 301 owns 133 acres of property just north and west of this proposed site along Rorson Road. It would easily fall in with the guidelines and the stipulations that the zoning board has established or is recommending. In speaking with Dr. Todd Stern, the superintendent of District 301, he would be opening to leasing a section of that property for a use of a solar farm. During our conversation, he expressed interest in partnering with green energy technology companies to develop curriculum with the high school to promote education on green energy technology. Partnering with environmentally conscious companies will provide our students hands-on experience with green technology as well as a financial return required by the private company. Number two, the Pingree Grove Fire Protection owns 31 acres near the corner of Dittman and Plato Road, which is used or will be used for a future fire station to replace the existing fire station in Plato Center. Chief Mitch Corsetti is offering 20 acres of that property to be leased as a solar farm with an agreement to have power supplied to the fire station at that site. Chief Corsetti has communicated with the Plato Township Board that he is willing to partner with these green energy companies and develop better relationships with government agencies and the private sector. And finally, our third site would be the Kane County Forest Preserve property at Muirhead Springs at the maintenance facility. There's 150 acres, most of it's rented farmland that could be used for a solar farm. The property is mainly used for the Forest Preserve storage of vehicles, maintenance. Most of the recreational part of that property is used on the north side near the Muirhead Farm. I think it'd be easily negotiated with a company to provide power to that facility, saving our taxpayer dollars along with the lease of the land, providing another revenue source for Kane County. Once again, we in Kane County can set a working standard for the private sector to provide green energy in a suitable location for a solar farm. As you can see, we in Plato Township and in the Plato Township Board want green energy. We want it within our borders. We see the importance and benefits of providing green energy to the grid for our farms and for our undeveloped properties. We are open to discussion with Sunvest and other green energy companies to build these projects in Plato Township. We want to be on cutting edge of clean, renewable energy, powering our homes, schools, employment, and community. The decision will set the bar for many other projects for years to come and establish guidelines for the right locations to preserve our communities as well as being environmentally responsible, not only for our generation, but generations to come. We ask, as well as the residents we represent, the board follow the recommendation of the zoning board and the development committee not to permit this location as a solar farm. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Patty Moroder.
I'll decline. They've said it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom McCoy.
Hi, my name's Tom McCoy. I live at 11N259 Ripburger Road, which is that little corner parcel up there. My issues are the property in question here. All the water that comes off of that property, it sheds off to Ripburger Road down in the ditch, and it runs north to my house. It goes under the driveway, and about 10 more feet it goes under Ripburger Road. I get plenty of water the way it is. I don't know if the remedies they say can fix or not this, but I just can't take the chance on having any more water. I'm flooded now to the point it's just too much. My second issue is my well. My well's only 50 feet deep like everybody else in town. They're very shallow, at least most of them are. I can't take anything. I just had put in about 5 years ago. I can't take anything infiltrating into that well system at all. My third one is my house is about 850 square feet. It's a little cinder block house. It already has stress cracks in it from previous movement, whatever it may be, that had been repaired in the past before I bought the house. With the pounding of these I-beams going in, I don't know how deep, 10, 15 feet, I can't take the chance on crumbling the house, any stress cracks to be repaired. I urge you to please consider the other options of the other parcels where to put this. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Herb Jensen.
Good morning, board members. Herb Jensen, 41W656 Russell Road, Plato Center, Illinois. I actually wanted to start out, my wife would be joining me. She's been here for the other meetings as well, but she has some medical issues she's dealing with. So I'd like to just read a quick statement from her that she presented, that she wanted me to read today. Good morning, my name is Deborah Jensen. I live at 41W656 Russell Road, Plato Center, Illinois. I've been a Plato Center resident for over 20 years. Due to illness, I could not attend this last meeting, the meeting today, and my husband will be reading this letter on my behalf. I would like to start my letter by speaking on the historical aspect of Plato Center, which is a small antiquity town established in the early 1800s. The book my husband is holding is named Built for Farming, a Guide to the Historical Rural Architecture of Kane County. And in this book, our house is actually pictured. It's bottom left. As you can see by the two photos my husband will be holding, here's one of them. This is right out of our window, our kitchen window, so all we would be seeing as we looked out that window is solar panels, completely solar panels. We live on the bottom southeast corner of that proposed development. So that's all we would see. The first proposal that was presented by the petitioner was only about 50 feet away from our home. The second proposal is not much better. This is a small residential village. This proposal for this site is far too close to all properties. The view that we would acquire if this proposal is passed would diminish the natural beauty behind our house and become an eyesore. Essentially, from our impression, it looks like a prison fence, 9-foot panels, 10 feet off the ground, only be covered by minimal shrubbery. Apart from the diminished view this will create, there's also the issue of noise and heat being released from the panels. When presented at the first meeting, Sunvest stated that no sound would be emitted from the panels. However, later, as of today as well, the meeting indicated minimal noise during the day and nothing at night. Either way, this noise, especially during the day, would distract from the sounds of nature while gardening. She has a beautiful little garden right on the edge of the property, again, right up against the solar farm, within 10, 15 feet. As for the heat issue, my research has shown that each panel emits 165 degrees of heat, which would cause harm, in our belief, to our ecosystem and the animals that live in it. The proposal presented by Sunvest said that they would love everybody to live in peace and harmony and enjoy their property. From my point of view, I don't see that ever happening. The final and most important statement I'd like to make is the fact that we do have clear and indisputable, that we do not have clear and indisputable evidence showing that there is no health-related concerns caused by living close to solar panels in a residential area. Even after 2 other meetings, Sunvest has yet to show us any photos of any solar farms butted up as this proposal is against residential homes. Based on this fact and other issues I presented, I ask that the board deny their bid to build the solar panel garden on such a small parcel of land located in close proximity to residential homes. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Deborah Jensen. I just had another point or two that I'd like to present, or at least voice, and that's in relation to the toxic concerns with these solar panels. Our understanding, based on the research that we've done, is that the panels themselves, if cracked or even over time, can leach into the soil. And not only after they're built, but while they're being built, there's toxic pollution being presented as they're being built. So for green energy, they're using coal and other forms of production to build these. So they're using production and pollution to produce them. Once these solar panels are decommissioned, there's a large concern of where they're going to go. Are they going to go into our landfills? Where will they be decommissioned and disposed of? California is now battling a huge crisis, and you can read it online. There's plenty of information about it. Where are they going to put these solar panels? They don't want them in their landfills. They've already identified that they're toxic.
Would you please conclude your...
Sure. So based on those statements and our concerns, I too, as the rest of the speakers would ask that the board vote no to this particular location. There are other viable locations that were presented and would definitely be a better location for this project. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Joe Hulke. Mr. Hulke.
Good morning. My name is Joe Hulke. We live at 41W685 Russell Road in Plato Center. We've lived here for 48 years, my wife and I raised our family, and I was born and raised probably a mile and a half to the east of that. So I've been around Plato my whole life. And with these developments, I know for a fact that there's 2 houses in town that if they go down in their basements, you could remove some boards and see their water level for their wells. With that being said, and with some of the other wells only being 50, 60 feet deep, ours is only 58 feet deep. I encourage the board not to allow this to be built in this area. The last thing I want to comment on is the fact that as I was growing up over on Tower Road, which is about a mile and a half west, that was always told to us that that was the highest point in King County. So a lot of our water issues, like Mr. Roeder commented on, as far as being in Plato in a bowl, it comes from that direction, and it flows down until it reaches to the north and the east until it hits the railroad tracks and then follows down into Plato Center. We've already got 2 locations in town that we have like 7, 8 foot high berms built to prevent the water from coming into their businesses. With all of that being said, I would encourage the board to vote no for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Dolly Hulke.
She's not here, sir.
Oh, thank you. That would be all the speakers who have registered to speak at this point in time. I would ask for a motion to approve and second. I'll move to approve. Do we have a second? Jared seconds. We're open for discussion. Paul? Do you have comments or questions?
Yeah, I don't have much comments. I got the emails and I listened to the objections. I don't find that many credible objections. Drainage is an issue, but I don't think this development will add to any drainage issue because it is not adding anything impervious. I have not heard any engineering report that will say drainage will be a problem or more problem. Second thing is about the foundation, the crumbling foundation that the homeowner has brought up. I would like to ask the developer if those poles would be auger drilled or it would be pounded. So that would be my question to them.
You can answer.
Yes, sir, and thank you. The answer to your question is it's a pneumatic machine that actually drives the support into the ground. So it's not a drilled hole, it's a pneumatic machine that will
It's a
pound.
pneumatic machine?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. Sterrett?
Thank you. My understanding, this is a business, correct? Pardon? This is a bottom line. This is a business, correct?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And so the constituents, or not the constituents, but I should say your customers that you're looking for, are they going to be in Plato, in that area in general?
Yeah, the way the program works is that the Community Solar Garden would sell subscriptions to anybody who's interested in securing their electricity from the solar facility. So it could be people from Plato, could be people from Elgin. It could be also anyone within the Commonwealth Edison Service territory.
Okay.
Yes.
So my question then would be, it sounds as if Plato Township actually is quite amenable to other areas. It sounds as if they say there's no problem with that. In fact, they've given you, I believe it's 3 different options. Have you considered any of those other options? I guess I'm looking for a yes or a no.
At the time we put our project together, those options were not available to us. We actually sent out letters to all the surrounding landowners kind of in this area. We needed to be close to the substation that's just to the south and west of the property. So we tried to stay close to the substation. We sent out letters, and this was the landowners that showed the most interest and that we chose to work with.
Okay, so I guess I just look at it as a business, which it is, which is a positive thing. We always want to bring forth businesses. But, you know, with Plato and, you know, wanting to have them work with you as well, maybe take a look as well. If we pass it, great. If we don't, maybe look at those other 3, because it sounds as if people would like to have renewable energy. That's a positive thing. However, it doesn't sound as if the people that are your surrounding and your neighbors are maybe too pleased. So,
thank you.
Mr. Davist?
Just a quick one. You mentioned removal after useful life. What do you consider useful life of it?
The useful life will be approximately 25 years. There may be a little longer, maybe up to 30. Our lease with the landowner is only 25 years, so that's kind of the stopping point that we see.
Thank you.
Ms. Winicki?
Thank you, Chairman Martin. I'd like to thank Mr. French for reaching out to me and showing me his plans for the solar farm, and Tim Moroder as well for reaching out to me and taking me for a private tour of Plato Center, which I had been to before, going to Plato Township meetings, and but showing me exactly where the solar panels would be located on this farm. As chair of Energy and Environment, I'm very much in favor of solar energy. However, I think that I'm in favor of solar energy when it's applied in the proper location, just as we saw at the previous petition in Blackberry Township. It's not adversely affecting homeowners who have lived there, some of them like their entire lives. I will vote no. Of course, this is in my district. This is a no vote for me. I would like my fellow board members to consider the decisions of our own Zoning Board of Appeals Commission, who listed 16 stipulations for this petition. And the Development Committee denied the requested petition. So please join me in voting no, and hopefully Bill French and he could find another location for a solar farm. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas?
Thank you. My question is for Mr. French. I just want to make sure we're clear. You mentioned location of the substation. Is the reluctance to find an alternate location for the solar panel farm because of where the substation is? A substation would have to be built if you move?
No, there's an existing substation. If you get too far away, the costs become prohibitive for interconnecting into the existing distribution system. So we were trying to be approximately a mile from, no more than a mile from the existing substation.
So an alternate location would require another substation, is that correct?
No, we would have to, your question is, would an alternate location require another substation?
Yes.
No, we would like to be within a mile of an existing substation if at all possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Silva?
Thank you. Good morning. My concern is that
renewable, sustainable energy is so important to us in Kane County and as a nation. I'd like to keep in mind that sometimes when people feel that things are shoved down their throat, it leaves a bad taste in our mouth. So I really would like to consider options where this is such an objective issue and there's a lot of evidence for it. There needs to be ways to be able to move in this direction without making people feel that they are presented with something that they don't want in their backyard. For whatever fears, for whatever feelings they have on the matter, I do feel that some things have been brought forth that are substantial. So at this point, I'm leaning against it. Thank you.
Mr. Weber.
Yes, Mr. French, at the Development Committee meeting, you mentioned that a 300-foot setback is not viable, it is detrimental to the project. Are you saying now that you could do a 300-foot setback?
So, just so everyone knows, we started off with an approximately 125-foot setback from the neighboring property lines to the south and to the north. We brought a revised plan that showed it approximately 225 feet setback, which we think is more in keeping with other special uses that would be allowed within the F district. Obviously, the 300-foot setback would quite possibly render the project unbuildable. It wouldn't be economically viable for us to do it. So that's why we propose something different. So a 300-foot setback we think would be detrimental to the development of the project because it would make it too small.
So your answer is that a 300-foot setback is not an option? Based on, I don't want to set a precedent when the zoning board gives stipulations and the business owner abides and agrees to those stipulations, and then we as a board say no. So I just want a definite answer on the 300-foot.
Yeah, again, we don't believe that it would make the project viable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Kenyon.
Can't believe I'm taking up your time, but I would like to vote for this. However, this is the wrong place. This is just not the right place. With all the land available in Kane County, take it away from the people. I don't believe a lot of the other arguments, but you look at that map. Put that in a subdivision or a little place in Geneva or St. Charles. Wow, it's the wrong place. Find another place for it.
Any other comments? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Ellen? Ferrero? Yes. Davis? No. Raz? No. Hanson? No. Hoshite? No. Iqbal? No. Kenyon? No. Caius? No. Hopi? No. Leonard? No. Lewis? No. Martin? No. Molina? No. Sanchez? No. Shefflo? No. Silva? No. Sterrett? No. Surgis? Thomas? No. Weber? No. Wegman? No. Winnicki? No. Fails.
Motion fails. Our next petition is petition number 4483 in St. Charles Township. It's filed by Master Real Estate, Inc. The representative here today is John Thornhill. John, are you going to speak or do you want to address questions? You want to speak, John, or are you going to address questions?
Yes, I will.
Let me finish the introduction then. The rezoning is a portion of the being sought is a portion of the property from Farm District to PUD. There's one objector who in fact has filed a formal objection, so the board has to have a 2/3 affirmative vote to approve this petition. The zoning board approved it with a list of 6 stipulations that we deal with, that the petitioner addresses the IDOT concerns about Route 25, that fencing be placed around the property, that the vegetation be cleaned up, that the vehicles parked in the facility be appropriately tagged and titled and operable, and that appropriate appropriate signage and communication will be developed, and also that a site plan be developed for the property. The Development Committee approved the petition, recommending the petition with one additional stipulation, that being that there be a dedication of right-of-way on Brookwood Road pursuant to the St. Charles Township Highway Commissioner's request. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Mark to give us a PowerPoint presentation, and then Mr. Thornhill.
Thank you. Just for clarification, because of the written formal objection from the property owner to the north who owns more than 20% of common property line, actually requires a 3/4 vote in order for this to pass. So this is the location where it's at. This is Route 25 north of St. Charles. This is a residential neighborhood that goes all the way down to the river. Here's a close-up of the subject property, which has some cell towers and existing residential, an old sort of farm building lot, which the property owner has begun storing some things on there. So he's proposing this rezoning in order to bring this into conformance and to have some use of this part of the parcel for an economic use. The adjacent property owner who's objecting owns this property to the north. You can see his driveway there. And some of the improvements that are being proposed as part of this would be a new fence all the way around the area used for the storage. The single-family use would continue there. These two access points would be removed, and some landscaping at that corner. A new entrance here into the storage yard, and then also some improvements to Brookwood Road to widen it to help alleviate with the traffic coming in off of Route 25. Here you can see the uses illustrated on the aerial.
Thank you. As I indicated, we have one speaker signed up. That would be Mr. Thornhill, the representative of the petitioner.
Thank you. I'm John Thornhill, representing Terry Masterson, the petitioner. I live at 44 White Oak Circle in St. Charles, Illinois. And I want to thank you all for using your microphones. I don't hear that well, so it's much appreciated. The petition before you is a request to rezone a portion of a 2.8-acre parcel owned by the petitioner, Terry Masterson. The property is located along the west side of Route 25, north of St. Charles, between Lambert and Brookwood Road, as you've seen on the aerial. Mr. Masterson bought the property in 2000. The interior of the property is generally screened off from neighboring properties lying to the north, west, and south by a stockade fence that is heavily overgrown with vegetation that runs along the north and west sides of the property. The easterly 8/10 of an acre, or all of the frontage on Route 25, has been zoned B1 business since 1937 and presently has 3 cell towers located on it, one of which was added by Masterson in 2007. The remaining 2 acres is currently zoned F farming and contains an old stone barn, a 2-car detached garage, and a single-family home constructed in 1964 on the site of a farmhouse. As a former farmstead several years earlier, the northerly portion of the property had been used for various related purposes, including motor vehicle parking in compliance with the B1 zoning regulations. That use continued and expanded somewhat for several years within the screened-in area until last February, when the petitioner, wanting to improve the appearance of the property, requested from the technical staff an opinion on what the possible zoning classifications might be for his property to be in compliance. The staff suggested 3 classifications for the property: B1, where it already exists; B3, with a special use for yards, buildings, and outdoor storage; and R1 for the existing residents. The division of the area would be approximately 1/3 for each of the 3 different classifications. A petition was filed last June requesting R1 and B3 with a special use as suggested. At the hearing on the petition in September, several individuals appeared and objected to the B3, but for the permitted uses and not so much for the special use on outdoor storage. The hearing was tabled until a resolution could be worked out with the neighbors. After discussion with the neighbors immediately after the hearing and much deliberation and subsequent consultation with Mark Van Kerkhoff on amending the petition, it was decided to refile a different petition as a PUD, a planned unit development, to focus on the only two uses being sought and to offer stipulations to address some ancillary issues that do not relate directly to land use. The hearing on the PUD was held and approved with the stipulations by the zoning board last month and was also approved by the development committee to place the matter on today's agenda. The PUD petition includes the northerly quarter of the existing B1 business zoning, a classification which presently allows for several retailing uses that are quite traffic intensive. Those uses will be relinquished with today's approval of the PUD. Some of the improvements to be made will include widening a portion of Brookwood Road to pavement to 22 feet as recommended by the St. Charles Township Highway Commissioner, dedication of Route 25 right-of-way adjoining the subject property as recommended by KDOT, eliminating two entrances to Route 25, one from the southeast corner of the property, which comes to an intersection at the two roads, Lambert and Route 25, and one just south of Brookwood, adding signage to eliminate possibility of storage-related traffic entering the residential area to the west, replace the screening with new decorative fencing around the open storage area, and landscaping according to the landscape plan which is on file. The goal of the petitioner is to provide an attractive and passive land use with little or no disturbance to anyone, and your approval of it is strongly recommended. Thank you. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thornhill. I will move and ask for a second for approval. Mr. Hoshite seconds. We are now open for comment or question. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is in my district, and the proposed rezoning is consistent with what the staff recommended. It'll improve the property, and so I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Mr. Davis?
Echoing what Mr. Hoshite said, it's at the edge, near my district as well, and this is a man who's been a good neighbor and is attempting to be an even better one and add to the compliance there. So I support this.
Thank you. Anything else? Ms. Thomas?
Thank you. I'm having trouble with the specifics this morning. What is going on the property, or is that to be determined? I heard certain business uses have been abandoned, but what's going on there?
I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying.
I believe the question is, what will be the use of the property? And I think you answered, but it'll continue as it is.
There's boats and small trailers and things of that kind on the property now, and that would be the continued use, that type of storage.
Mr. Fries?
Angela, I had the same question when this came to development, because we're used to hearing the term PUD and expecting to see a residential development or something. But this pretty much amounts to a housekeeping exercise. If I'm not mistaken, the residential will stay the single-family residential, and the business will stay the same with the new stipulations with fencing and cleanup. But the nice thing is it gets the access points off Route 25 to make for a much safer access to it. It gives the Township Highway Department the proper size right-of-way for future improvements of the road.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. That's what I was looking for.
Anything else? Mr. Copey?
This is a tough one for me.
lies, in my opinion, somewhat in violation of the farming zoning. I know there's several properties in the county that are in discussion right now in regards to that very same issue. I'm a farmer, and I have some equipment that is not necessarily considered agriculturally equipment, and therefore I had been strongly urged to remove probably 75% of it. And it was very painful, and there is not going to be satisfaction until it is 100% compliance. And there are other properties in my district that are under severe scrutiny over the misuse of the property. So if the prerequisite to getting zoning is to offer a fence and accept the violation of the farm zoning, I decline, and I vote no.
Other comments? Hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Allen? Ferrero? Yes. Davis?
Yes.
Raz?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Oshite?
Yes.
Iqbal?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Caius?
Yes.
Kopi?
No.
Leonard?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Molina?
Yes.
Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva?
Yes.
Sterrett? Surges?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Wegman?
Yes.
Winnicki?
Yes.
Passes.
Motion carries. Our last petition is petition 4485 in St. Charles Township. It's filed by petitioner Jesus Fuentes. The property is located at 900 Center Road in the township. The rezoning sought is from F District Farming to PUD. The zoning board recommended approval with one stipulation, that being that the petitioner works to address the comments regarding the right-of-way dedication that were made, I presume, during that hearing. And the development committee also voted approval and adopted that same recommendation in its approval. We have one registered speaker, that being Mr. C. Fuentes. Do you want to speak, or do you want to just address questions if they... So, floor is now open. We need a motion. I will move approval. Mr. Kenyon seconds. We're open for discussion. Mr. Kenyon.
I drive by this property every day. He's a good neighbor. Since he took it over, he's improved it. It's at the end of the Circle Drive out. I recommend voting yes.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Allen? Ferrero? Yes. Davis?
Yes.
Raz? Hanson? Oshite?
Yes.
Iqbal?
Yes.
Kenyon?
Yes.
Caius?
Yes.
Kopi?
Yes.
Leonard?
Yes.
Lewis? Yes. Martin?
Yes.
Molina? Yes. Sanchez?
Yes.
Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva? Yes. Sterrett?
Yes.
Surges?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Wegman?
Yes.
Winnicki?
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin and members of the board. Now on to resolutions and ordinances. First, the consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Mr. Caius?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to remove items 7 and 8.
Okay.
1908.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Caius. Any others to be removed? Mr. Hoshite?
1906.
1906. Is that based on the call? I was in error. That's on a different agenda. Thank you so much for your thoroughness. Okay. Thank you, and I'm sorry. Okay. Any others? Okay. If not, may I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of number 1907 and 08? So moved by Mr. Kenyon, second by Mr. Sanchez. Clerk, call the roll.
Ellen. Ferrero. Davis.
Yes.
Fraz. Hanson. Oshite. Iqbal. Kenyon. Reyes. Kopi. Leonard. Lewis. Martin. Molina. Sanchez. Shefflo. Silva. Starrett. Surges. Thomas. Weber. Wegman. Winnick.
Okay, motion passes. Now on number 190708, if we can consider those together, may I have a motion and a second to discuss, potentially approve those. So moved by Mr. Fraz, second by Ms. Barrero. Mr. Caius.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to, I think it's refreshing that the board looks at the residents in an area and responds appropriately to their desires. In this case, it happens to be the Long Meadow Parkway, and I thank you for the opportunity to point out how unpopular the toll for the bridge is in my district in northern King County, and encourage the board, excuse me, to think of us way up north as neighbors, and we find it, and my constituents find it, they dislike being tolled for a bridge that crosses their neighborhood, and we will probably end up paying for the bridge for who knows how long. So thank you for the time to bring this, how unpopular it is up in my area. And since we did save so much money on the bidding process, I encourage the board possibly to find ways to do something other than create the only toll bridge on a minor roadway in the state of Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caius. Any other thoughts or comments? Ms. Starrett.
Thank you so much, Chairman. With regards to this, with regards to Long Meadow Parkway, I've always been a proponent for it. I've always voted for it. I just have one question, whether it be now or later at some point. I did read an article actually in the Wall Street Journal, and it was, I believe it was December 15th, and it was with regards to municipalities and local governments in the fact that we, in general, and I say we because that's what we are, that we have used different organizations to gain our bond ratings, and one happens to be Standard & Poor's. They said that across the country that it's a 65% that the governments or the municipalities have used Standard & Poor's only to get their bond ratings. And they said that one of the reasons why is because the ratings that they receive, and I guess that they give out, it's they only use the information that are from the actual governments. This is what was cited in the article. And they said that that was one of the reasons why I guess governments use it, is because if you give the information, which I know our illustrious staff did work very hard to make sure that all the information went in. I just wanted to know at some point if we did use any other organizations to receive bond ratings as well. I know that in general that the gold standard is Standard & Poor's, but with regards to this article in the Wall Street Journal, which mentioned that that was the reason why governments use them, was because they usually gave a higher rating. So I just wanted to make sure, obviously our financial footing, but it's on par, and so I just wanted to make sure of that. So thank you so much.
Okay. I think that the basic question is, did we use any other rating agency? The answer is no. We used Standard & Poor's. It was the recommendation on the part of our financial advisor and the bond underwriters that, let's see, it was because of there's additional cost, and as you mentioned, the outcome was very positive at the lower cost at a AA+. So, any other comments or questions? Mr. Fraz.
Just a couple of quick things. Responding to Mr. Caius, mentioning that we should respond to our residents. The bridge is being built based on 7 resolutions received from the area up there asking for the for the bridge to be built, so we do respond to our residents. The toll need is based on the fact that the bridge is going to serve Cook and McHenry County as much, if not more, than some Kane residents, so it seemed fair to do that. And as far as eliminating the toll, if somebody wants to find $27 million, I'll put that on your back. We would be glad to eliminate the toll. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fries. Any other thoughts or comments? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Okay, these are taken together.
Together.
Allen. Ferrero. Yes. Davist.
Yes.
Fraz.
Yes.
Hanson. Hoshite.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Caius.
I can't read that.
Gopi.
Yes.
Leonard. Yes. Lewis. Yes. Martin.
Yes.
Molina. Sanchez.
No.
I'm sorry, Miss Molina, you voted? You did, okay. Sanchez, no. Shefflo?
Yes.
Silva? No. Sterrett? No. Surgis?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Wegman?
No.
Winnicki? Yes. Passes.
Okay, the motion passes. Now on to appointments. Mill Creek SSA Advisory Board. May I have a motion and a second to approve the appointments to the Mill Creek SSA Advisory Board? So moved by Mr. Fraz, second by Ms. Wojnicki. These are recommended and affirmed, assured by Drew Fraz, who's very close to that in his work with Ricky Sparks, who's in charge of facilities and the work over for our Mill Creek residents. Any thoughts or comments? Mr. Fraz?
Yeah, with the exception of Mary Kobeman, all these are reappointments to people that have served very well on the boards, and Ms. Kobeman is a new resident to the area and wants to be involved and is very qualified to do so. So one new resident, the rest are all reappointments.
Okay, any other thoughts, comments? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Allen. Guerrero.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Fraz.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Oshite.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Caius.
Yes.
Kopi.
Yes.
Leonard.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Molina. Sanchez.
Yes.
Shefflo.
Yes.
Silva. Yes. Sterrett.
Yes.
Surgis.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Wegman.
Yes.
Winnicki.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, motion passes. Next is Mill Creek Water Reclamation District. May I have a motion and a second to approve the appointments to Mill Creek Water Reclamation District? So moved by Mr. Fraz, second by Mr. Sanchez. Any thoughts or comments? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Allen. Guerrero. Yes. Davis.
Yes.
Fraz.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Oshite.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Caius.
Yes.
Kopi.
Yes.
Leonard.
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Molina. Sanchez.
Yes.
Shefflo.
Yes.
Silva.
Yes.
Sterrett.
Yes.
Surgis.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Wegman.
Yes.
Winnicki.
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, the motion passes. Finally, the Emergency Telephone Systems Board, the King County ETSB, which provides capital allocation decisions to the 911. I believe that, well, first of all, may I have a motion and a second to approve the appointment to the King County ETSB? So moved by Mr. Sanchez, second by Mr. Martin. I believe that this appointment is Mr. Leonard, who is serves in the role of chairman of the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. Any thoughts or comments? If not, clerk, call the roll.
Allen. Guerrero. Oh, I'm sorry. Davis.
Yes.
Fraz.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Oshite.
Yes.
Iqbal.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Caius.
Yes.
Kopi.
Yes.
Leonard. Okay. Lewis.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Molina. Yes. Sanchez.
Yes.
Shefflo.
Yes.
Silva.
Yes.
Sterrett.
Yes.
Surgis.
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Wegman.
Yes.
Winnicki.
Yes.
That Passes.
Okay, motion passes. Regarding executive committee or executive session, may I have a motion and a second to go into executive session to discuss personnel, settlement of claims, and pending litigation? So moved by Mr. Sanchez, second by Mr. Leonard. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it.
Yes. Dias? Yes. Hopi? Yes. Leonard? Yes. Lewis? Yes. Martin? Yes. Lena? Yes. Sanchez? Yes. Stepwell? Yes. Silva? Yes. Sterrett? Yes. Sturgis? Thomas? Yes. Weber? Yes. Wegman? Yes. Montague? Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Again, I would like to express appreciation to everybody who's been involved in the process. Board members, our negotiators, Drew Fraz, Carl Shadle, our expert legal team, and then Dominic Romanazzi as the union negotiator and members of the Teamsters Union for their patience to be sure that the details are correct and fully understood. The whole process naturally is tough on both sides, but fair. There's give and take, and it is a good thing to have a 4-year agreement where our objective, all of us together, is productive work on behalf of our 532,000 constituents. So thank you to the board and everybody involved. Are there any other thoughts, on the agenda, next item is a motion to adjourn. And this says Tuesday, February 11th, but it's actually Monday, February 11th, because Tuesday is a holiday, and that's why it's on Monday, and that's why there needs to be the change, just so that we have it proper for the record in your calendars. So may I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Ms. Wegman, second by Mr. Weber. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. Ayes have it.